Remember this guy? Well, Takashi Yamazaki doesn't, that's for damn sure. Remember this game? Well, Takashi Yamazaki doesn't. But let's focus on that first one in this video. Apollo Justice was an interesting turn for the character of Phoenix Wright. He was almost entirely different in that game, and Shu Takumi left the character in what I would consider to be a pretty good place for Yamazaki to build off of. But he didn't. A lot of my viewers want me to talk about games 4 through 6, so here you go. It's been a while since I really looked at Dual Destinies, so I've honestly forgotten a lot about the game. I'll probably be streaming it or something soon, but if there's one thing I remember, it's the massive character whiplash that they gave us with Nick's character in Chapter 1. I think it's important to look at what Nick's character was before this game, so we can really get into why he's kind of disappointing in this game. There are 3 distinct eras to his character before this. Pussy Nick, Trilogy Nick, and Emo Nick. Nick from Trials and Tribulations Case 1, the flashback case, is essentially a comedy character, basically just created to give the player a laugh about what the protagonist was before, and to tie in the stories of all the characters from that game. Nick in the trilogy is a really good protagonist in my opinion. He has a nice arc over the 3 games, mainly the final 2, and it's all wrapped up nicely at the very end. His primary traits are, of course, an almost blind belief in his client's innocence. He cares deeply about those close to him, even Larry. He bluffs a ton, and he rarely really plans ahead. And no, Rise from the Ashes doesn't count because the writers kind of forgot who Nick was in that case. Like, he's totally out of character for most of the final trial day. But he's a good protag, and easy to understand. He's one of the reasons the trilogy is so good. And honestly, he should have never really returned. But of course, Capcom couldn't let go of their cash cow. Well, Ace Attorney is not really a massive cash cow, so cash calf? So Phoenix makes a return in Apollo Justice. Now, a lot of people are quite critical of this character, and I've done an entire video on it, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. But for me, the main issue is his role in the game. But past that, in Apollo Justice, he's almost completely different, sans the flashbacks and turnabout succession. Hobo Phoenix is a lot more negative. Definitely kind of depressed. Like, look at his clothing. That is a man who gives just about no fucks. In this game, he's quite cunning and plans ahead a lot. The old Nick would have never really done this, and that's a great shift in my opinion. It's been something like a decade in-universe since we first took over Nick in the first turnabout. And there was a 7-year time skip between the ending of Trials and Tribulations and the start of Apollo Justice. He should be different. This leads me into Case 1 of Dual Destinies. Now this isn't a case review, and if you want one, I don't mind the case. It's fine, it's a tutorial case. Who cares, let's move on. So, we get the first anime cutscene in the main series, telling the player that we aren't in Kansas anymore. Some shit blows up, Apollo looks emo standing in the blown up courtroom. So why do good girls like bad guys? We see Nick's beanie, which is just about the only trace of the character he was, like, a year ago in this case. He's calling his wife or something, who really cares to be honest. So, we meet Athena. Cool girl or whatever, weird ass hair to be honest. Nice superpower though. And she's voiced by the same woman that voiced Miu in Danganronpa V3. Definitely a completely different character. But this video is about Phoenix, so let's skip ahead. Athena is getting some PTSD flashbacks in the trial, so who appears to save the day? Daddy Nick. He opens the courtroom door and does this.
As you can see, there is no room for debate.
Objection!
Like, first of all, how did he hear what Payne was saying? Like, that's a pretty big courtroom, and it's so full of people, so I doubt that there was a loud echo or anything. He was outside, You hear him open the door after Pain talks. Did he just guess that he needed to say objection? Like, I get it's his catchphrase, but come on, guys. Is his new superpower super hearing? Now, he's definitely more confident in this case, which is something they carried over. A lot of people say that he's right back to his old trilogy self, but I don't think that's entirely true. Look at his first interaction here. Could you really see the Trilogy Nick having this much cool confidence? You could argue that he's playing it up because Athena is nervous, and that's definitely something he would do with Maya in the trilogy. You know, the worst of times or when a lawyer has to show their biggest smile. But we're playing as him here, and there's no internal dialogue to suggest that he's faking it. My problem with the character is that they took away so much of what made him interesting in Apollo Justice, and kind of just half-ass replaced it with some of his trilogy traits. Like, he's not the same guy as he was there at all or anything, but the development seems to have happened way too quickly. Like I said, it's only been a year or so since we saw this guy, and almost all traces of him are completely gone. Now, the cool confidence is something that he had as a hobo, but it's also something that he had during the flashback case in Turnabout Succession. And I know I said it doesn't count, but he does show aspects of that in Rise from the Ashes, which I use as an example because that was written after the trilogy, so you could see that the writing team had already planned for that to be an aspect of wherever his character would go next, if anywhere. Here's a scene that I definitely don't think adds up to what we saw before. It's been a bit since I've gone all the way through Apollo Justice start to finish, but this is not something that Hobo Nick would do, right? And he's right back to it. That's Trilogy Nick almost 100%. It's a comedy scene, don't get me wrong, and I don't mind it. It's just weird. His whole character in this game is just weird. So, the case goes on, and it's basically just a generic Ace Attorney intro case like I said earlier. There's one witness, some bomber guy who's obviously the killer. We get a tutorial on how to use our new toy, the Mood Matrix, and of course, the defendant is implicated of hurting a main character with bloody writing. Sounds about right for Ace Attorney. So, we get to the end. The killer threatens to blow up the courtroom because he's fucking weird, but Phoenix points out that it's a fake bomb, and it's all over. We win! Yay! So, what's so weird about Nick here? Well, I've mentioned it already, but most of the things that made this guy compelling literally like 1 year ago in universe are gone, basically. He shouldn't be the same, but it took him 7 years to go from this to this, and now he's at this within just 1 year. That's so much development off screen in such a short amount of time. In Apollo Justice, he was a bit of a nihilist. He was always working behind the scenes in the shadows, willing to cheat if needed. And he did cheat. He played dirty in each trial he was involved in that game. But that side of him is completely gone, and replaced by development from his trilogy self. The issue here is that Yamazaki clearly threw away what Hobo Nick was, and instead decided to write developments to what Trilogy Nick was. We're seeing the grown-up version of that character, not like the slightly happy version of what he was in Apollo Justice. This isn't a good way to do character development in my opinion, and to be honest, it kind of puts Apollo Justice, the game, not the character, placed in the story, kind of in a weird limbo. I mean, Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice as a whole also do this, but that's just one more piece of the puzzle, is why it sort of feels disconnected from Apollo Justice. What in that game actually matters in the grand scheme of the series? Hobo Nick's gone, Apollo has like 8 backstories now, none of which really come from that game. Apollo and Trucy still don't know that they're related, although they did finally mention it at the end of Spirit of Justice, but they still don't know. The Juris system is gone. Clavier is an afterthought, sadly. I love that guy. And there's a ton more. Well, back on topic so I don't get too sidetracked. I can share what I like, despite the issues. Let's see. He's still consistent. Like, I don't look at him and say, yeah, there's no way this is Phoenix Wright. I like him in his mentor role here a lot more than at any point during Apollo Justice. In that game, he's kind of like the absentee father that only comes back when he made the NBA or something like that. Here, he's actually there for his children Athena and Apollo, and I guess Trucy too. Speaking of which, why isn't Phoenix named after a Greek god? Janet Sue really fumbled the bag on that one. Anyway, this was just a shorter video on the character of Phoenix in the first case of Dual Destinies. Like I said, I may be streaming the game, I don't know. Have to buy a webcam for that. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe. See you later. Goodbye.